Okay, help me get this straight. Eddie's uncle, Wayne, thinks that Victor Creel escaped from Penhurst Asylum and that he's the one running around Hawkins committing all these murders?
Pretty much.
But Victor committed the eyeball murders, like, way back in the 50s.
Well, 59.
So that means these murders predate Levin and the Upside Down by about 30 years?
Yeah.
Which makes spooky Victor Creel like 70 years old.
Yep.
So he's a grandpa murderer who can turn invisible and lift people into the air.
It doesn't make sense. I know. That's why I said it was a shot in the dark.
I know. I just thought that by shot in the dark you were being modest or hiding something super solid up your sleeve that you were gonna wow us with later. But this is like really, truly a shot in the dark. Like we are snipers with blindfolds on who've been spun around 50 times.
Stranger, danger, talking stranger things. Together, forever, we're loving stranger things. It's Stranger Things Forever. Rewatching season 4 from the start to the finish. It's Stranger Things Forever. Every podcast we do will cover just 10 minutes. Stranger danger everywhere. I hope that you people still care. It's time for me to do it. Let's get to it. Come on, everyone.
Greetings, stranger friends, and welcome back to Stranger Things Forever as we continue on into Stranger Things 4, Chapter 3, The Monster and the Superhero. But before we get to that, how's everybody doing? Every time I put on an episode of this show, of this podcast, we're one day closer. We're one step closer to Stranger Things 5. We are closer than ever before. What better place could anyone be now that you're here with me? So come on, everyone, here we go. Let's start the show, because now I'm here, now you're here. Nothing can go wrong, because I am right where I belong. If any of you get that reference, that song, that is wonderful. Before we get into the 10 minutes of today's show that I want to talk about, I typed in Stranger Things to the old Google News to try to get, see what's up, see if there's anything new that I've missed. And there was a news article or a blog post that came out today that actually is connected to one that came out last week. Both of which, the one that came out today, obviously I missed until now, but the one last week I missed too because I've never heard of this website, ICV2. ICV2. I don't even know what that means. IC is capital, V is small, 2 is a large number, and on their homepage it says the business of geek culture. Okay. It's a geek culture website. What's not to love? But the article I want to talk about first is from July 22nd. It's posted by Jeffrey Dome Sanchez. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And it says, play through Eddie Munson's Lost D&D Adventure. With Stranger Things, welcome to the Hellfire Club RPG boxed set. Wizards of the Coast announced Stranger Things, welcome to the Hellfire Club, a new D&D RPG box set which will hit retail on October 7th, 2025. Dungeons & Dragons and Stranger Things team up again to offer players a new boxed set that features the lost adventures of Eddie Munson, a beloved character from the next Netflix series. I think we knew that. It contains 4 adventures that pits players against Stranger Things monsters like Demogorgons and Demodogs as players uncover the mysteries of the Veil of Shadows. The box set comes with a new DM's screen as well as 91 cards for spells, magic items, and monsters. 72 tokens for PCs and monsters. I don't know what that means. Playable characters. 2 double-sided maps, 15 sheets, 4 in-world handouts, a set of 11 dice, a combat tracker, a quick start guide, 4 adventure booklets, and a play guide booklet. It will retail for $49.99, but I would pay $49,999. Well, no, I probably wouldn't, but I would say it's worth it. And it says Wizards of the Coast also announced that Heroes of the Borderland, a new Dungeons and Dragons. Well, that has nothing to do with Stranger Things. I'm not reading that. So I've said it before. I've never played Dungeons and Dragons in my life. I have read dozens and dozens of books in the Forgotten Realms, Dungeons and Dragons world, Wizards of the Coast, Forgotten Realms, R.A. Salvatore, Dritz, the Dark Elf. So I am familiar with this world to a degree. When I watched that, what is that, Dungeons and Dragons, Thieves Among Us, or whatever the name of that movie is, there were so many things in that I was like, I know what that is. I know what that is from the books that I've read. I've never played the game once. And even with the Stranger Things, one of the books I read, I mean, this is going on years ago now, but they were talking about the Demogorgon. You know, it's not a Demogorgon in like it is in Stranger Things. It is the Demogorgon. It is a specific demon. So it was always cool kind of realizing, or it was cool to me that I was able to be like, oh, I recognize some of these terms, some of these names. But again, if you play Dungeons and Dragons, this seems like something specific that you would probably love. I'm going to put a link to this in the show notes, as well as a link to a follow-up to this article that came out today. Same blog post, same blogger, Jeffrey Dom Sanchez. Now, this is something I actually would think I'd get even without playing Dungeons and Dragons. WIZKIDS unveils D&D Stranger Things Heroes of Hellfire, a new miniature set. Again, I don't know anything about the Dungeons and Dragons game except the little things that I've seen in the community episode as well as in Stranger Things. That's like my major knowledge of it. And wasn't there a Freaks and Geeks episode that did it years ago as well? But I do know that some, I guess, miniatures are involved. WizKids unveils D&D Stranger Things Heroes of the Hellfire, a new miniature set that will hit retail in October 2025. The new box set adds Stranger Things casts Dungeons & Dragons characters to RPG sessions, just in time for the release of the thing I just talked about, the box set. This blister pack contains 6 painted miniatures. Lady Applejack, who, isn't that Erica? I remember that from, yeah, that's Erica. Tyre the Paladin, Nog the Dwarf, Sundar the Bold, Will the Wise, everyone knows Will the Wise, and classic D&D Vecna. Not Vecna from the TV show, which is, again, you hear Vecna and you realize, oh, that's Vecna. Well, no, it's what Dustin calls, it's what the kids call Vecna. It's like the nickname they give them. Which it doesn't always tie in with Dungeons and Dragons per se, but it's based on their knowledge of D&D. So that's why this says the classic D&D Vecna, which I think is cool. The D&D Vecna is painted to look like a pewter miniature from the early days of D&D. Awesome. I love pewter. I used to have like a little pewter Irish cross or something that I got when I was in junior high, and I thought it was the coolest thing. And there's pictures of all these things, so there'll be the link to that in the show notes as well. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get into part 4 of The Monster and the Superhero. So where we last left off, Jason, Lucas, Patrick, and that other guy, they were showing up outside of, I don't know if it's Gareth's house. Yes, that's right. I have the names of a corroded coffin now. It's Gareth on drums, and typically you go to the guy's house who has the drums because those are the hardest to move. Jeff on guitar in a sweet Black Sabbath shirt, and the man in that Maiden shirt, yeah, he's just called Freak One. There's no actual name associated with him. Freak One? Are we serious? Couldn't like throw him a Todd or a Kevin or well, not a Bill, that's taken. Nothing. Freak One. And by the way, he looks about 30 in the garage. And when I looked him up, he was 25 in 2020. So this year, he's a turning 30. But anyway, Gareth, yes, that's right, I know his name, looks at Luke. He said, where we left off last time, he's like, what are you doing with these douchebags? And we open up with Jason turning and like, Sinclair, you know these freaks? And Lucas lies. And yes, you get angry at him because he's like, oh, they know my sister. They tried to get me to join their club or their cult. And you can see Jeff is like, what the hell? But I look at Lucas's eyes when he says that. It's almost like he's being like, guys, just go with it. It's like, he says, we're just trying to find Eddie. He's almost like, don't make it worse. I'm sorry. He seemed like he was apologizing with his eyes to me. And they're like, we're just looking for Eddie. And Garrett says, well, he's not here. And then Jason shows his true colors as an a-hole. He's an a-hole. He punches Gareth square in the face, throws him into his drums, which is a terrible, that is just a crime right there. Steps on his hand, threatens to break his hand. Gareth finally speaks up. He gives in. He tells him, Dustin Henderson. He's been calling around asking about him. And Jason seems pretty happy. He's like, where can we find this Justin? Who the hell's Justin? Where can we find this Dustin Henderson? And Lucas has this look on his face like, oh, shit. So we jump away from Hawkins and we head over to California. Now, does anyone feel this scene seems a little wrong? Like, Eleven's being questioned by the police. She is a minor. There's no lawyer, no representation, no parent, no guardian, nothing. Alone being questioned by the police. I feel like when Joyce finds out about this, well, no, because they just leave. So if Joyce found out about this and everything kind of stayed, peachy in California, there would have been a lawsuit. Again, would there have been, though? Because that would have drawn attention. It's tough. The police are definitely in the wrong here as far as legality and dealing with an underage person. But, I said I wrote down I smell a lawsuit. But again, I'm kind of thinking, yeah, they probably wouldn't do that just because of the bringing any extra attention to 11 that you don't want at all. But the cops are real pricks to her. They're like, do you realize that she had a concussion? Did you try to kill her? And she's having like flashbacks. She's like, no, you didn't. No, I don't know. You don't know? No, I don't know. She gets a mug shot. She gets fingerprinted. And she literally in like whatever short amount of time, she gets taken away in a van to juvenile hall. As the boys try to gain answers, Jonathan, Will, and Mike are trying to figure something out. And she's like, are you a guardian? Now, I thought Jonathan would be 18 at this time, at least, and be like, yeah, I'm 18 years old. I'm her brother. I'm the guardian while the mother's out of town. Something like that. And I wonder if, in reality, that is something that would happen. But she's like, I'm sorry. Doesn't work that way. I can't help you. She wasn't very helpful at all. So they barge out of the police station just as the van is driving away. And somehow Mike seems to know that 11's in there. And 11 looks back and just sees Mike standing in the middle of the road, looking sad. If only some adults were there, but the only adults that were recently in California, Joyce and Murray, they're on that plane. They're on the plane together, and Joyce talks to the flight attendant. Says, how much longer? I think about an hour. She's like, oh, what are you and your husband going to be doing? And I guess that's what the story they told. She's like, oh, we're going to go see some old friends. She gets a meal that looked kind of gross and also somehow kind of delicious at the same time. She cuts into it just as we cut, get it, over to a bowl being filled with slop. Slop being poured into this bowl. The bowl is given to a man in line, and that line the man is in a mess hall or in a mess tent of a prison in Russia. So we see the Russian prisoners, they get a bowl of slop, a bowl of gruel, and a piece of bread, one piece of bread. Hopper uses that bread as a bargaining chip. At first, the prisoner is like, thinks that Hopper's coming on to him. He's like, no. Well, he says something very offensive, but he says, no. And Hopper's like, no. He just wants him to hit him as hard as he can in the leg irons. And the guy's like, I'll break your leg. And he said, just do it. Can you do it? I'll give you the bread. The guy agrees to it, but he wants the bread and the soup. So Hopper not only is going to get his leg smashed, but he's not even going to get a good meal. But Hopper gives in. Hopper relents. Back at the railroad when they're working, the dude just lays into Hopper's leg irons, like smashes them, and Hopper is fighting back, screaming in pain, like bites into his jacket, and he is just in a ton of pain as we leave Russia and we jump back over to Hawkins, where we spend the rest of these 10 minutes. We see Robin and Nancy heading into one of my favorite places in the world, the public library. That clip at the beginning is from this moment where Robin, it's one of those conversations that happen on television shows to get people to hear it. It's like, I'm going to say this for my benefit, but really, wink, wink, it's for the benefit of the audience. Robin's getting clarification from Nancy that Uncle Wayne thinks that Victor Creel escaped from prison, and it's him doing the killings, even though he's been in prison since 1959. So basically, he's a grandpa murderer. Robin keeps talking about how this is a long shot. Nancy's giving, one-word answers. And that's when Robin, is like, I'm sorry, am I annoying? Like, I know that I come on too much and I don't have a filter and I say all these things, and she knows she can be this way. And she's like, I know we don't know each other very well, which is true. They really haven't spent that much time together. But Nancy's like, no. But I have to admit, Nancy was being rude. She was being dismissive and rude. And Robin was talking and saying, maybe it was annoying Nancy because, again, Nancy wanted to do this on her own. I get that. But at the same time, Robin's there to help. She wants to help, and she is just kind of talking it through. But Nancy, what she wants is the keys to the archive. Before the internet, before you could just look things up, the only place you could really do research if you didn't have an encyclopedia at home would be through the library and through the library's archive of newspapers going back decades. And it just doesn't get better than that. So we actually leave them and we head over to the rest of the gang in Hawkins, Dustin, Steve, and Max. They're at the guidance counselor's house. Well, Max actually goes and she goes, I know it's break and it's weird. It's weird to come over and talk to you during break, but do you have some time that we could talk? And the counselor's like, yes, of course. Come in. She goes in while Dustin and Steve wait in the car. Now in the car, there's a fun little conversation between the two friends where Dustin brings up that Steve's basically throwing herself at Nance. I like they call her Nance earlier, at least according to Dustin. He's like, I just was trying to protect my friend. He's like, sure. And he thinks that he still has a thing for her. And he figures that's got to be the reason why you refuse to date Robin. And Steve's like, yeah, that's not the only reason. And I thought that was funny because Dustin has no clue. So Dustin keeps prodding and, saying his face is all red and he's laughing. And Steve's like, hey, I'll punch you so hard your teeth will fall out. And they're like, whoa. And I love this. Because Dustin is like, whoa. And Steve knows, he's like, ooh, that was too far. And they're like, yeah, it's too far. It's okay. It's too far. He apologizes. They give a little fist bump. And my first thought was, they do fist bumps in the 80s? And it turns out, yeah, they've been fist bumping much longer than that. For me, I feel like the fist bump kind of came in the late 90s, early 2000s. That's at least when it started being used very regularly, I think. I don't know. It's when I started using it. Either way, they fist bumped, and perfectly logical for that to happen back in the 80s. So we go inside the counselor's house, and this is where we spend the remainder of these moments happens here. Now Max is going in. She's really trying to get information on Chrissy. This is what this is all about. But to do that, she's got to be a little disingenuous that she wants to talk to the guidance counselor more about herself. And in doing so, the guidance counselor is going to talk about Max, and to Max about Max's issues and Max's, the things she's been dealing with. And you could see that Max wasn't fully prepared for this, and it's starting to bring up some things. And I wonder if this kind of puts fuel on the fire for what happens to Max later. Like, I wonder if this moment adds to Max's fear, that adds to, what we see. I know things have already happened, but I wonder if this doesn't help the issue. Because, Max is talking about how all the murder's going on and making things worse. And the counselor's like, yeah, well, you've been through trauma. And when you keep your feelings and your pain bottled up the way that you do, it doesn't take much to trigger them, So, when it rains, it storms. And I never heard that. I heard when it rains, it pours. When it rains, it storms. That was a new one. And Max is like, yeah, I know. And the counselor says, do you think you're ready to talk more about that night? And you could see Max thinking about it, probably like, ooh, I didn't really expect to get this deep into this. I just want to know what's going on with Chrissy. So Max thinks about it, and we see a flash of her and Mike in the mall. We see a flash of the spider monster in the mall, filled with the flayed, and Billy standing before it. Then we see the monster's tentacles stabbing into Billy, and that's time. That is it. This felt like a quick 10 minutes. We had a little bit of everyone, right? Because we got, think about the teams we have right now. We got the three boys in California. They were in it for just a few seconds. 11 getting questioned by the cops, getting fingerprinted, getting a mugshot, getting taken away. A little too much, I think. A little extreme for these cops to do all this very quickly, especially with the fact that she has a house. And we could wait and hold her until they call the mother. I guess they didn't hold her in the prison. Maybe that's what they expected to do. But yeah, just that's crazy. And meanwhile, the mother, Joyce, is on the plane getting food. Speaking of food, that's how we get to Hopper, who pays a dude in food to smash his leg up. We'll find out what that's about, but I think we know. And we see I like that the smashing of the leg coincides with the tolling of the bell in the downtown Hawkins library, where Nancy and Robin are there to do a little research. Love it. Which then brings us back to the other team in Hawkins, who are there they're trying to figure out what's going on with Chrissy and see if they get any information from the guidance counselor, who instead is actually trying to get some information about Max and trying to talk to Max about her issues. And that's where the 10 minutes end. And, we got some back story on Victor Creel. We got an idea of how Hopper is going to leave. We now know where 11 is headed, and we know that, we already knew about the guidance counselor, so we didn't learn really anything there yet. It's like that part is building up. We didn't learn anything new from Joyce or Murray. So the big thing we learned in this is Hopper is trying to loosen up his leg chains, and 11 is going to juvenile hall, and Robin and Nancy are doing some research on Victor Creel. And that's it. We did it. We nailed it. So, yeah, I think we're ready to move on to part 5, but that is next time, my friends. Wow, we are going. There's only 6 parts in this episode, so expect another episode of Stranger Things Forever sooner rather than later from me. But in the meantime, you can follow me on all the socials at Geek Mentality. You can follow the show on Blue Sky at strangerdangerpodcast.com, and on Twitter, I think it's Stranger D Pod. What a terrible name. But really follow Geek Mentality everywhere except TikTok, which is Geek Mentality Mike. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, yes, it's 95% audio, and you'll see some shorts of me, but I still would love a subscription. I still would love you to subscribe. It's Fans Not Experts on YouTube. The Facebook page is also Fans Not Experts. I don't do much there, but if you want to throw a follow there, if you're on Facebook, or you can log into your grandparents' Facebook page and follow Fans Not Experts there. And of course, that's because StrangerDangerPodcast.com is a subsidiary, is that the right word, of FansNotExperts.com, where you can find every podcast that I've ever done over there. That's FansNotExperts.com. And of course, you can go right to the Stranger Things podcast at StrangerDangerPodcast.com. That's it. I am done. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Stay stranger, my friends. And remember, you and I, and fans all over the world of Stranger Things, are the reason why Stranger Things will live on forever.
Fans Not Experts.